Well, welcome back to economics. This is Dr. Kling. And I wasn't quite sure what to title this talk, but I'll call it Outsourcing and Technology. And the point I want to make is that the way that outsourcing takes place depends on technology. So sometimes the technology will cause a person not to do something, and sometimes it'll cause it to do something. So let's give an example. Let's say a typical middle manager at a business that's an N needs to type a memo. Okay, well, if you go back to, let's say, 1970, 1960, let's go 1970, the middle manager would outsource that to a secretary. Fast forward till about 1995, and it would be done with a computer, so not really outsourced, or in some ways outsourced. So the typing is, I'll put outsourced in quotes, to a computer. So another way of putting it is that the secretary's job was outsourced to the computer. So I guess what's interesting about that is that we have this middle manager who didn't do any typing as of 1970. By 1995, the middle manager is back to doing typing. Sort of an odd thing. And let me give one more example before I explain this oddity a bit more. What I call the automated voice response systems, or automated telephone response systems. Press 1 if whatever, those things that everybody hates. So what did that replace? So it used to be you would get sort of that when you made a phone call, you would get a receptionist. So when you called someplace, you get a receptionist who would then transfer you to someone who could help. So an employee who could help. Then they got rid of the receptionist, and what you had was sort of automated. They automated the receptionist function, and so they outsourced that. Outsourced the receptionist to machines that did things like voicemail, or if you were dialing a main number, there would be like automated directories. So you had automated directories, and we got rid of that. And then we got rid of the employee. Remember, we had the employee who could help. And so they outsourced the employee to the call center. So that's the famous, you get somebody in India or China, and they tell you that their name is Fred, and you know that their name's not really Fred. But that's so that was the next step. And then our poor Indian fellow got outsourced to these menus or automated response systems. Now, what I'm going to suggest is that each step this got more annoying to the consumer. Okay? First, instead of getting a receptionist, so first you got the receptionist, but then they outsource the receptionist, so you don't get a human being. So sometimes you get thrown into voicemail, or you have to deal with an automated directory that may or may not help you. Okay, then you got outsourced to the call center, and so you had somebody whose knowledge of English wasn't necessarily good. Now, actually, I have to say sometimes the call centers work better than the regular employee used to do. But often you're not getting someone as knowledgeable as the on-staff employee. And then finally you get these awful menus that you can't even get out of, and you're just screaming into the phone saying, "Get me a human being, get me a human being." The IRS is the worst at that. If you ever have a problem with taxes, there's no way to speak to a human being with the IRS. So at each step of this outsourcing, it became more annoying to consumers. So in some sense, I think they have outsourced labor to the customer. They make the customer work much harder solving a problem than the old way, and it's just gotten harder at each step for a customer to solve the problem. So maybe the company has cut its costs, but it's added costs to customers. And the question with both of these, especially with the voicemail problem or the telephone response problem, but also a little bit with the typing problem, is at what point is the technology going to actually make us really better off, clearly better off? And let's stick with the telephone outsourcing. I think the issue here is that there's an opportunity to either come up with much better artificial intelligence in the phone response so that the customer is actually happy. So I'm actually getting my problem solved quickly rather than crawling through an endless set of menus. Maybe that the person will pick up the phone, or the machine will pick up the phone and say, "What's your problem?" And immediately say, "What's your problem?" And I give an answer, and it's intelligent enough to figure out what the problem is and how to resolve it. Then we will have used technology successfully to outsource. As of now, there are actually opportunities for customers to outsource this work. I know there are companies that specialize in how to navigate these automated response systems, and so they will, I think for a price, help you get to somebody who can help you much more quickly than you can on your own. So, but the labor has been outsourced to the customer. Like, can you imagine if a CEO, in dealing with other CEOs, were put into this kind of a system? So, if you would like to talk about a merger, press 1. If you are threatening us with a lawsuit, press 2. I mean, no CEO would put up with that kind of time wasting. So what these systems are doing when they outsource labor to the customers, they're assuming that your time has no value. And I think that assumption is going to cause trouble. I mean, another possibility it would be to let customers pay a fee to talk to a human right away. And there are a lot of situations where I would do that. And that would recognize that I have a high opportunity cost of my time, and I would just like to pay to talk to a human rather than to go through all this mail, this voicemail stuff, or the automated response stuff. So that's just a case where I think outsourcing is a work in progress, or maybe a work in anti-progress, and eventually people will come up with ways to outsource the customer problem-solving function in ways that are more efficient, or they outsource the function of responding to the customer who calls with a problem in a way that's more efficient and that does not do this outsourcing the labor to the customer. I don't think that's the right long-term solution. So that's my little rant, and we'll go on to something else next time.